All right. I am here with Seth Waite, and he is currently the Chief Revenue Officer over at Schaefer. How's it going, Seth?
It's going great.
All right. I'm excited to unpack your multiple exits and your multiple successes. But before we get into the nitty gritty, let's talk about your background. What got you into business and entrepreneurship?
So I started kind of my entrepreneurial journey really young. I was kind of like that classic, like get a newspaper route kind of kid. Always selling something, creating flyers, doing lawn care businesses throughout my teenage years, and so I started entrepreneurship pretty early. And I actually built and sold my first digital company while I was in college. So kind of in that, 20-year-old kind of range, I sold my first business, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot in that process, and the rest has kind of been history. So as I went through that process, I just realized, man, this is addicting, and I love it. And and then it's just been kind of a serial approach ever since. How do I build the next company and prepare to sell it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I love that you kind of used the example of lawn care businesses. That was the first one that I did when I was like really
Yeah.
young. You get that first taste of like giving a customer an experience and exchanging
Yes.
money, and it's such a fun arc there. So let's talk about the first venture. What was the
Yeah.
initial first kind of success that you had, and what was that journey?
Yeah, so the very first company that I had was back in the early days of like blogging when no one was doing it, It was early, and I basically found that there was a platform out there, a framework that people were using in the very early days of WordPress. So, you've got the WordPress.com, WordPress.org kind of components. And so that was a big deal at the time that you had all of this customization, and people were buying templates and frameworks. And what we were able to do, me and a partner, is build a really successful site that everybody wanted to use our design and theme for. And so every time we rolled out a new design element, a new plugin, something we were using, um, people were buying it. And so we created a marketplace. We built it on top of another kind of template theme or framework because we knew if people were buying that, then there was already investment, particularly in the WordPress community where there's a lot of people who are unwilling to spend money. We knew that we had found the right kind of audience and customer base, and so we just dominated that niche. Basically, built a lot of templates, a lot of plugins, and all the tools we wanted and needed to grow our you know viewership. And so as I was uh, I was 20 at the time. My business partner was 15 and in high school, and was the developer designer. And before we knew it, we had something that a lot of people were talking about, and about a half million views and visitors on our blog every single month. And we found this nice little niche. And as my partner was getting ready to graduate high school, and I was graduating college and going on to law school, um, in that process, we said, you know what? Why don't we sell this and let's go do the next thing.
Nice. And what was that conversation like when you get approached by an acquiring company, and what was that like?
We had been approached a few times up to that point, and it was always an honor, right? Like, you're young and inexperienced, and at first you're just like, somebody wants to buy this, like, um, and you don't even know where to start. Like, that's part of the challenge. At least it was then, and so when we decided, hey, we're trying to figure out who we are. We were at very pivotal moments in both of our lives, so we kept thinking, why don't we attempt to go back to some of the people that have reached out to us in the past and see if there's anyone else that's interested, and and then as part of that process, that's exactly what we did, and one of the previous people that had reached out ended up making the purchase. So
Nice, nice. So after that, you get your first notch on the belt. You get your first
yeah,
real
yeah.
exit and your win. What did you do after that?
So after that, I went to law school and then thought, I'm going to go be a lawyer and do all this stuff. And that business thing was just a fun fling. But I got about a year into law school and realized I do not want to be a lawyer. Like, I have no interest in doing this. It's one of those moments where you're like reading like one of those terms and conditions, and I was like, if this is the rest of my life, like, I just can't do it because I couldn't help like constantly thinking about, well, how would I market this? And if I was the business owner in this case that I'm reading about, what would I be doing? So I made a really tough decision that's not been tough the second I made it, like ever since. I've never regretted it. But I just left law school and was like, it's the right thing to do. I have all their interests and passions, and people were like, do not do that. That's crazy. Get the education, go to law school, be a lawyer, get a profession. And I was like, no way. So I left, went into an agency, and was a content strategy manager and got to work with some of the biggest customers in the world. So I was running grocery digital marketing for grocery at Sam's Club, which is owned by Walmart. I was working on Walmart digital strategy projects, sending emails out to tens of millions of people, building all of these content strategies that I had used as a blogger, just like a year before, but I was rolling them out to some of the biggest companies in the world. And it gave me the chance to go from small time entrepreneur to understanding, okay, what does enterprise business look like? And what does it look like to operate at scale? And how can I rethink some of the marketing elements that had worked on a small scale for big scale opportunities? It also allowed me to test, honestly, like theories that I had developed and put them into practice, because I had the budgets and the tools to really do that. So that was a pivotal period of my life, as part of it, that then triggered the idea of like, well, if I can do it for these guys, why don't I do it for myself? And
Mhm.
that really then generated a series of different ventures where it's like, okay, I'm going to create my own agency. That agency was acquired by a software development firm. And that acquisition was a blast because it was a text message acquisition. Like, that's how it happened, was like, um, the two co-founders of the software development firm sent me a text message and said, hey, we just hired, John, who's a guy that I had worked with at this agency and was like, work BFFs. Like, we strategically just did everything together. And they were like, how do we get the band back together? That was the text. Just hired John. How do we get the band back together? And I was like, well, you buy my company, like, let's make this happen. And so that that acquisition was, equity deal, a lot less cash from that perspective. But I was like, look, you're trying to grow, you want to exit. I knew from day one, it was like, look, we've got a 5 to 6 year time horizon for an exit as part of this process. And I want to be partners with you in this. And so I became a partner and then became the chief marketing officer, then chief growth officer over sales and marketing. And we grew at 95% year over year for almost 6 years straight. Um, and Inc. 5000 4 times, all these awesome experiences, and just exploded. I mean, we were pretty much doubling every single year for 6 years, and then we went to market, and a private equity firm came in and made an investment, and purchased all of my shares, and I left that business and
Nice.
immediately started another one. So
Yeah, I mean, I love the cadence that you have of
yeah,
like go in, ramp up, doubling every year is pretty incredible to do
yeah,
in any business, in any industry, doesn't matter what it is. Just keeping the wheels on with something
yeah,
like that is very difficult, as an
yes,
operator, for sure. So when it came to, I guess, because I'd like to dig into some of the negotiations and how
Mhm.
these things work. But when it comes to the previous exit and then like private equity buying out shares, those are a little bit different. So let's kind of go to the next exit, and then we'll unpack like maybe how those conversations began, and then sort of the structure of a deal where it was more of a, I guess, clean cut with private equity buying shares. It is an exit, but it's a little different,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it's different, for sure. And and so the next company that I started was a company called Handled. So after selling all of my shares as part of the previous company, I was like, you know what? We've been working with a client who was in the moving industry, and I don't have a ton of moving, experience. It wasn't like I wasn't born and like raised in a family of movers like most moving companies are. Um, but I'd moved a lot, so I'd had 7 moves across the country, lived in a bunch of states, had done local, and in the process came just kept coming back to moving sucks. Like nobody's doing a great job. It doesn't feel good, and the move itself, everyone treats like it's the culminating event in your like relocation, and I'm like, it's the middle. Like the rest of your life, like you've got to unbox and unpack and like create a new life in this place that you've just put all your stuff into. And so we built Handled as a concierge approach to really allow you to just move really fast and take care of all the things in your life that come with moving. And we focused on local moving as a key part of the process initially and said, hey, we want to be in as many markets as we can. We want to build these relationships. And we built a computer vision application on a mobile device because one of the other things we found was people hate getting quotes for moving. So one of the worst parts of the entire experience is how do I just get a price? Like I just want a price. And that usually turns into I'm going to get 700 phone calls from people
Yep.
asking me if they can come into my house and go through all my stuff, maybe with an iPad, probably a clipboard. And they're going to like count how many pairs of underwear I have and like open every cupboard and do all this stuff. And we're like, there has to be a better way. So that's what we built. We built the ability to just pick up your phone and as a customer, walk through your house with your video on, and it would count and identify everything in your house. And then using machine learning, it would create a real time price. And that real time price then turned a 8-day process typically to get a quote because you had to wait until they could come out. Then they would come out and then they would send you a quote in a couple days. And it
Wow.
turned 8 days into 5 minutes. It's basically as like quickly as you could walk through the house and follow the directions. So it was a game changer. We went from 4 markets that we launched in originally to 120 markets in about 9 months.
Wow.
And it was just wild ride. We went from zero revenue to 9 million, and we were growing like crazy. And then COVID hit, and I was like, "Holy crap! No one's gonna move. Like no one's even going outside. Like they're definitely not moving." So we added a couple new products, which actually turned out to be amazing for us, which was campus moves. So students all over the country were
Mm.
stuck. Like they had to leave the campus, but all their stuff, including the contraband, like there were so many things we found, but all their stuff was stuck in these dorms. So storing it, mailing it home to them, like was this huge ordeal. We had 13 of the biggest universities in the country in 48 hours once we created this new product. Like literally, COVID hit. We heard what was happening. We built a landing page and a website, reached out to all these universities. 13 signed up. And before we knew it, we had a $6 million worth of contracts for a 2-month period to basically empty dorm rooms across the country
Mm.
and store and ship them. So pivoting and like learning and growing and being agile, like COVID became this thing where we're like, okay, we just solved a major issue and we found that people were definitely still moving, and actually moving increased in the summer of 2020 because everyone was realizing I don't have to go to the office anymore. I'm going to move back home, or I'm going to move to a better neighborhood, or I need to move to an apartment that has a room that I can work in because it's not working the way that it was before, where I was just like working in the kitchen and kids are running and the dogs bark and all that kind of stuff. So moving increased, and we went through the process of going out to market and raising venture capital. It was a great time to do that. So we were basically out there pitching. I was building up all of the investors, and our number one investor that helped us start was the biggest moving company in the United States. And they invested in us because they're like, we want to invest in our potential disruptor. It was
Mm,
really brilliant of them. And when they did that, and we were going out to market, they were like, actually, we're going to acquire you before someone puts more money in you, and we can't afford to buy you anymore. So, so it's an interesting kind of exit. But what happened in that process then was we exited and sold to our first investor. And then at that point, we had a 60-person team. In just 18 months, that team went into that company, Unigroup. And I became the chief experience officer, whose job was to connect the dots between all of marketing and technology. And so we went from 60 people to, a 300-person team. And the job was integrate technology and create the customer experience of the future. And I did that
nice.
for a year.
Nice. Very cool. And
So,
yeah, I understand that pain point having moved from California to Florida
yeah,
five-ish years ago. I mean, just the getting the quotes, people coming over, shrinking that time down to like a using tech is a great concept. Really
yeah,
powerful too, for sure. Love that. So what was the negotiation like? You said that it was an initial investor, the biggest moving company, and
yep.
did you shop it around at all, or was it just they're the ones and you went with them?
Well, so we definitely had been shopping because we had investment opportunities. I mean, we had people who were like, "Don't sell,
Yeah.
just let us keep putting money into the business." But a big part of the conversation was the strategic benefit of being aligned with the biggest mover in the country, right? Like
Mm.
these were people that had invested in us at the very beginning and made it possible for us to do this. And there was a lot of strategic reasons for why that was going to help us. And one of the lessons I had learned in all of my previous kind of acquisitions and entrepreneurial components was a big part of it was like set a big purpose statement and a big vision. And our like massively transformative purpose, that that title kind of comes from exponential organizations, but this big purpose we had was to reimagine and redefine the moving experience and make it suck less. And what we kind of came back to was the best person to help us do that was the biggest player in the space. Like if we wanted to accomplish our mission faster, then this was the deal that strategically allowed us to do that faster than any other. And so it was very much a purpose built acquisition and less of a, you know, how do we play against all parties? It was really like, how do we achieve what we've set out to achieve? And we felt good about that process.
Got it. Very cool. And you stayed there for a year. Was
I
it like
did.
a was it an earnout? Was it all up front? What was the structure like?
Yeah, so it was a combination of the two. And I had a year of golden handcuffs, basically, of like,
Yeah.
hey, you need to be here, make sure the integration goes well, set up the leadership team, bring everybody in. And so that's ultimately what we did. And, uh, and it was awesome. So
Nice.
it was good. And I, I don't love being inside of a larger organization. So for me, that year was rewarding and fulfilling in lots of areas. Like I loved getting to know all the people that were also very passionate about this mission. There's just a lot of bureaucracy. And it comes with the scale and size, and I just wasn't interested in being there a day past my
Yeah.
contract, and
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm ready to go back into an environment where I have a lot of influence and control over vision, mission, and where we can go build something from scratch again.
Yeah. 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 And I think, I mean, this resonates with everybody that's gone through an acquisition from a larger company. And I, I think that treating the bigger company almost like a university or like an experience where you can learn specific departments is
Hmm.
really the value that not only I've seen personally, but I've heard from other people as well, is learning the at scale version of what you were doing with different
Yes.
departments, whether it would be marketing or customer success or sales. In my
Yes.
experience, learning from a full blown sales org at scale, what that was like, and I'd never seen that before. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of difficulty, probably more difficulty than there is with ease with an
Yeah.
acquisition like that, but just the learning is super valuable. So it's cool you got to stay there for a year, and despite bureaucracy, you could still see things
Totally.
that you could utilize for the next
Yeah.
venture. So,
Problems that we could solve. I mean, I got to work at the board level, right? So it was a very strategic role. And so I got to work with, 12 board members who all came from different backgrounds and experiences. The networking itself was just a great experience. And then to your point, the university side of like learning. And I really focused on how do we integrate, and then how do we set up a strategy for the next 5 years
mhm,
that will work from a technology standpoint. Because we were bringing artificial intelligence into a company that was still using mainframe technology, right? So, like,
yeah,
that intersection was absolutely wild. And the change management process was also just this really amazing experience of like, okay, I'm used to going fast, and you kind of, you burn through things pretty quickly in a startup, right? You don't have time to make a lot of those kind of components. In a large organization, though, the change management process is very different and
mhm,
requires a lot more time and a lot more personal and individual attention to all of the individual stakeholders. So, yeah, incredibly valuable education.
totally. And before we get to the finale, a lot of people are always curious around timing and preparedness.
Yeah.
So let's just quickly unpack that. Like, what tips could you give people that are operating right now in terms of being prepared? And you have such an extensive background with all these exits. You're a coach with exiting. So, what can you share around how to be prepared for an exit? And then quickly into just timing, why it's the right time to sell.
Yeah. So most people don't have like on January 1st, 2027, I'm going to sell my company, right? Like they don't have this like predefined component there. So what I always just push on is focus on being a sellable business. I think that's a really critical part of it. Understand what makes you valuable and different. And if you can focus on those two things, your business then is going to be ready when the time comes. Because sometimes you're going to get a reach out where you're like, I literally just I cannot not pursue this exit, right? Like it's the time, it's the deal. And other times you're going to want to go find the opportunity. So I always come back to build a sellable business. Profitability is a key part of that. The more profitable the business is, the easier it is to sell. When you're ready, people will pursue you as part of that process also. Um, but outside of that, growth is always the key part. If you've got growth, you've got the ability to create new opportunities, and great operators can come in and bring their strategic benefits. So one of the reasons why Unigroup bought Handled was because Unigroup could apply its scale in such a strategic way to Handle's technology that it created something completely new that neither of us could do on our own. So you're also always looking for a strategic buyer who's going to get more out of your business and the assets and technology or whatever you have that you've built than you could ever get on your own, because they're applying resources, funding, strategy, relationships, clients, something like that That's the ultimate deal. And then from a timing standpoint, I take a different approach than I think a lot of people, but I'm like, I always try to leave before I feel like I have to. So like I think that's really important, which is like if I think I'm gonna be tired and burned out in 10 years, I want to be gone in 7.
Mm,
Like I want to make sure I would rather leave some money on the table, but make sure that I've got the energy to go into the next thing than feel like I'm done and I need a couple years to just figure out who I am post acquisition.
mm,
So for me, that's always a key kind of measurement on timing is when do I think the markets are going to work out, timing on valuation, some of those key conversations, but also a key part of it is just how do I personally feel about the mission and vision? And when do I generally predict that I'm going to get really tired? And
mm,
I want to be exiting at the peak of my momentum and not because I'm like, I don't want to see this ever again and I need to get out of
yeah.
here, which happens
Yeah.
way too often for business owners.
Yeah. Well said. I really like that. The conserving of energy, because a lot of times after a transaction happens, there is a bit of lost feeling for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
conserving energy to know like I can ramp up into the next thing is a really valuable tip. So that takes us to the finale. You covered a bunch right there. So knowing what you know now, what would you tell Seth 10 years ago in addition to everything you just mentioned?
The biggest thing I think I would say is um, really it's like how to get more balance in the process. So I love the like scale up. I love the exit. I love this whole serial nature, but I have always been the like work 80 to 90 hours a week and just grind. And what I've learned over the last exit or two is while timing and like putting in the work is really essential, there's a lot of wasted effort and energy where you feel like you're doing things you're supposed to do as a business owner and as a founder, and it doesn't actually provide lift or value. And
Mm,
so, what I've learned is like there's a handful of really smart things to do, and then there's a whole bunch of wasted effort in trying to prove to yourself and to other people that you're doing everything you can. And
mm,
that leads to poor decision making and burnout faster than almost anything else. And so for me, I just have kept coming back to focus on doing less and make sure that it's the highest priorities that will turn into the most value. And don't try to prove to anybody that you're good at what you're doing. Like the numbers will speak for themselves, your profitability, your growth rate, things like that. But nobody cares if you're working 80 hours a week. Like, and nobody cares if 40 of those hours are mediocre in terms of impact. So
mm.
take care of yourself personally, build balance, and in the process, I think you think clearer and you make better decisions, which create more value, bigger
Well
exits.
said. Well said. Yeah, I personally can totally understand that feeling of needing to be hustling 24/7 for sure. But that's basically all the questions that I have for you. What are you
Awesome.
working on now, and where can people learn more?
Yeah, so I am the chief revenue officer at Schaefer. They can go to schaefer.co and check us out. We're a revenue generation company because what I keep finding is as everyone's prepping to sell their company, they always need more growth. And so we help solve that by making sure they've got the right offering for their product or services, the right outbound sales opportunities, and the right inbound marketing. So,
Very cool. Very
yeah,
cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Everybody that's listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Seth mentioned will be in the show notes. But thanks again for coming
perfect.
on.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been fun.